oh. Whoa, what was that?
What do you think it was? Dennis, can I hear your voice, please?
Why?
That was sufficient. Okay,
Every week you ask the same question.
Keith, where are you going to be in the shot? You were at the moment you're.
How's that? How's that?
Can you get rid of the rain, please?
No, I like it.
And you can get it back when we're on the air.
What?
If I get rid of it, it's gonna really. I'm in a hotel room, so it doesn't look good. But I'll show you.
Oh, just-
Hey, it looks like my
It's
house.
Okay, thanks.
I could do that.
We
I
can
think
get
it'd be
Frank's.
better. Yeah, I think the effect does not work.
All right, Michael Barkman's got his name changed. Okay. All right.
I
So are we streaming? Does anyone know?
Yeah, I see the Facebook stream.
We are, and I just want to reassure viewers that this is the Gillmor gang, as just proven by the editor's decision about my reign.
It's Steve Gillmor's reign.
Exactly.
Ah,
Sovereign.
Sovereign.
okay, so all right,
I don't know whether LinkedIn is live. No, I didn't get a notification. Can somebody tell?
Yeah, I'm looking.
Twitter is definitely live, but just in case you don't know.
Twitter's on. Okay.
Yeah, Twitter's live.
Okay, so
Yeah, hold on. 1 minute ago. Yeah, LinkedIn is live.
okay, perfect.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, so sounds like we're streaming live to Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. We're about to start the Gillmor Gang on this Sunday, the October 16th day of the year. Okay, let me just ping and we're get going. All right. Mute is off, and we're gonna go in 3, 2, 1, and
Hi, Steve Gillmor here. This is the Gillmor Gang. I'm watching the Giants game, so I hope you enjoy the show. Starting off in the pivotal state of Georgia. Yes, all hell is breaking loose, and we're going to find out a lot in just a few days, 23 to be specific. And I'm going to ask Brent Larry. Welcome, Brent.
Thank you. How do you like my prop?
It's blurred. We can't see it. What is it?
The prop.
It's blurred. It was blurred on the debate as well.
There it is. Well, it's kind of fighting there. Anyway,
Oh.
that's my fake prop. Like,
Oh, no, it's a real prop. It's a real prop.
Yeah, the real prop was not allowed. It's the
When I was a little kid, my dad had a patient who was the #2 guy at the FBI. So he got me a letter signed by J. Edgar Hoover calling me a junior G-man. Now, does that make me now that I'm an adult or an aged man, would that make me an aged agent?
wow.
you had me going there for a second.
I did, but you knew where it was going, so I made that.
I really didn't. But the guy that we're talking to is Frank Radis. Welcome, Frank.
Hello, Steve. Thank you. Hello, gang. It's a pleasure to be here. Tina, how are you, babe?
all right.
Okay. Well, that's about a wrap. Also in England, UK,
At the moment.
in the upper right-hand corner of my screen
Oh,
is Keith
I
Tier.
hate that.
I know, I hate it too.
Hi.
Hi, Keith.
At least I'm on the upper right. If I was on the lower right, I'd have a problem with it. But the upper right is fine.
Oh, you're lower left to me.
Yeah.
I don't see how you
In
keep
my-
your political affiliation straight these days.
You know, in my world grid, I don't fit on the grid at all.
Is that good or bad?
There is, if there's only left and right to choose from, I have to be somewhere else on another screen, maybe with AirPlay or something.
In the framework of Massachusetts, also known as the what was it? The compact of Massachusetts, is Dennis Pombriant.
Greetings, world. Hi, Steve. It's a pleasure to be here on this wonderful Sunday afternoon. Keith, is it true that you're on a secret mission to advise Liz Truss about how to get out of a sticky wicket?
Yeah, you
Just
go
fire-
open the
just get
door
rid of her.
and you leave.
No, or you kick her out. Boom.
No,
Bye-bye, Liz.
My secret mission is with Keir Starmer to persuade him that he really doesn't want to be prime minister right now. There's too many things that are going to go wrong.
Hmm. I think you're right.
We got in some weird cabin in the Pacific Northwest is Michael Markman.
How do you do? Here I am. We're suffering a little bit of unhealthy air right now because of wildfires to the east of us.
Oh, I thought it was because China was blowing their bad air.
Yeah, well,
into your space.
I've heard that theory too. Yes.
Yeah, that's a good theory.
That theory comes with a prop badge.
Ooh,
Yeah,
yeah.
Toy Secretary of State.
Oh man, and is it true? I mean, are the legit polls really seeing them exactly neck and neck, or is that the case, Brent, there in Georgia?
Yeah, you pick the poll you like best to get the
Yeah.
result you want, you know.
I mean, if you were to take an average of, like, say, 6 polls.
Frank's teased out an answer here. Well, let's see whether Frank can get Brent to actually say what he thinks.
Here in England, if you take the average of 6 polls, it's a 5'8" woman with blonde hair.
Very fun. You know what? I was avoiding going down any one of the 3 pathways I could have gone down.
And I was thinking, if you take the average of 6 polls, you have to find, 6 people from Poland and see what they think. But apparently,
That was one of the ways.
kind of.
I wouldn't touch any of those lines with an 8-foot Hungarian.
Yeah, we're just setting them up and they're being knocked down like bowling pins. Excellent.
Dennis, my best friend here who invited me is a 5'7" Hungarian.
Very nice.
Okay, so I just checked the average polls according to Real Clear Politics, and when I'm introduced, I will let you know.
It's been introduced. It happened.
Oh, that's right, my cabin. I forgot.
Right.
Okay, Real Clear Politics average of polls has Warnock up 3.3.
Yay.
Okay. All right. That's encouraging.
Okay,
News.
Stacey Abrams is losing, correct?
He's getting
According,
killed.
yeah.
Ah,
Although not according to Stacey Abrams,
Or Kara Swisher, evidently. I
right? Well,
didn't read the Post, although I was told to.
oh man, the Post. Love the Post.
According to all the spam I get from Fetterman asking for money, he's neck and neck with Dr. Oz.
Doctor
well,
Who.
yeah. All the fundraising appeals say we're tied, or we're losing, and I get those both from Republicans and Democrats.
You got to keep
They
that money
both
coming in.
say they're losing.
They need
Yeah,
that
have
money.
you haven't sent in your recent membership, Mr. Radis. If you do now, it'll be a 5-to-1. So give us $5.
You're only getting
now.
5-to-1. They're offering me 1,500 to 1.
Oh man,
They
really?
need marketing advice. They need marketing advice. It should say, we're winning and we're throwing a party, and for every $10 you donate, you get 1/10 of a ticket.
A 1/10 of a ticket.
Well,
Yes.
so you donate $100, you get a ticket.
In crypto.
So my foot can go to the party?
What if you can only afford 50? I mean,
Get a half a ticket, your head can go.
Yeah, but the ticket's an NFT.
Yes, and you have to pay for it with crypto after you've negotiated it in the blockchain.
Oh my gosh.
Ian Dury and the Blockheads.
Why?
Is that our
why
new
don't they
name?
let you?
No, that was the name of a great group.
Yeah.
It was.
If it was that great, I thought I'd probably hear about it, but
Yeah, well,
No, you're too young. You're too young. You're too young.
Well, see, now
heard
I'm
of
not,
it.
and I don't remember them. Was there some individual in the band that?
Ian Dury was he'd had polio as a kid, so he had a gammy leg, and he had a weird mannerism. The famous song is "Let Me Be Your Something Stick." What is it? Stick?
Your rhythm stick.
Hit me with your rhythm stick.
Hit me with your rhythm stick. That's it.
It's a great track.
what a title.
Hit me slowly. Hit me quick.
Hit me with your rhythm stick. Oh my God, man.
Yeah.
What year
we may
was
have just-
that?
We may have just sold a few streaming plays.
Yeah. What year was that?
I
Yeah,
think it was the 70s.
0.001 cents. Sorry,
I prefer
this
9
is
cents.
68, 70, something like that.
So
Okay.
sorry I wasn't around to
Well,
really fully enjoy that.
And I was playing R&B. Was it an R&B song?
No, he
No,
was in the
this was-
same group as the Specials and the Beat. It was that.
Yeah. Okay. So I was actually playing
What do
like
you mean?
Otis
Yeah,
Redding and
Specials or the Beat?
both of those bands. I know who those guys are.
Are they really? Tell me about what were their hits?
I couldn't name one.
That was a
But
great hit.
you don't. But you don't have to have hits in order to be
No,
respected,
you'll know
especially
this
here.
one. You'll know this one. In our house, at the end of our street.
That
Our
was like
house.
the 80s. Wasn't that the early 80s? Madhouse, our house in the middle
Our
of
house.
us, right?
Yeah.
That was
See,
like
so
in the
there
80s.
you go. That's one.
Yeah.
But as I was
I
saying,
remember
I remember that.
I missed that era of music because I was playing Otis Redding and Wilson Pickett, James Brown, and those kinds of artists that Washington, D.C. in the 60s paid money to go and listen to.
You mean those hacks?
Yeah.
Sitting on the dock of the bay.
There was a street in
Yeah,
Washington.
Rescue me from this out of tune.
Remember that there was a street in Washington, D.C. It was
Rescue me.
14th Street, and all the bars that had live music tended to be on that street, interspersed with gentlemen's clubs of the era. So in the 70s, you'd see a place where a band played, and then a gentlemen's club, and then another place where a band played, and it was just like that all the way up and down the street. And during the riots in the 60s, we actually had to evacuate the club we were playing in, which got burned down. So
Smoke on the water.
By the way, I'm at this conference in London, and I can't tell you how many people here have a Substack. I've probably seen like 30 or 40 speakers, and at least half of them say, and you can check out my Substack.
Ooh.
One of them writes for Barry Weiss, actually, a woman called Zoe that writes for the Daily Telegraph as well.
So what was your point about Substack in your newsletter this week, Keith?
Well, Hamish Mackenzie, one of the founders, wrote a polemic in a way, saying we're not a newsletter. We're not a newsletter. Our goal isn't to be a
Newsletter economy.
Yeah, we're not doing the newsletter economy or even the creator economy.
Right.
What we are is a platform for writers to be independent and write whatever they want for whoever they want. And I just thought it was, and then he referred to the inclusion of video and audio as media types. So I thought it was the first time I'd heard him be so expansive about what Substack thinks it's doing. I thought it was very good, actually.
And Brent, you're going to have Hamish on your PPN show soon, correct?
Well, thanks to the connecting expertise of Keith Tier.
Beauty. Good job.
Wednesday, November 2nd, 2 p.m. Eastern. Hamish,
Yeah, market the hell out of that puppy.
And
Should be
he's
good.
going to be on That Was the Week on Tuesday the 21st.
I'll
No,
post. I'll post it on my Substack newsletter.
He scooped me. I'm looking forward to it. Although he's got a hard battle because, you know, if you're trying to get people to stop saying the creator economy, you can forget that.
Yeah.
Maybe, and I don't know. I've never really heard anybody talk about newsletter economy. Yeah.
Well, by saying that we're not the newsletter economy, he actually jumps off the cliff into being it called the newsletter economy. So
No, he's
So,
putting
you know-
himself. He's putting himself in the same debate that Apple puts itself in when it says that ads should be permission-based and tracking, in that he's going against the targeted advertising model.
right.
And what he's really saying is whether you make money or not isn't the point. The point is this is yours and you decide what to do with it. And we're not going to put ads on it. You know, and then, you know, obviously their business model is to take a share of whatever money you make, but they don't try to drive you to make money. If you don't want to, you don't have to. So I think it's kind
complicated
of
pitch.
Yeah,
it's
I was going to say,
complicated,
well,
but
that's
at the
I mean,
end
the
of the
elevator
day,
door is opened and then shut again at this point.
what did you think of it, Steve?
Well, I think he writes. He's a former writer with a former colleague at TechCrunch, I believe. That's what he did before he went into venture, or at the same time as. So he's a good writer, and I think that the same thing that's happening with the streamers, you know, namely Netflix and Disney Plus, etc., is going to happen here. So the idea that he's selling against the advertising community as part of the package, I think, is destined to be rearranged. Put it that way.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
getting that's putting yourself on a limb, huh, Steve?
well, I was right about Musk, so I'm going with it.
We'll see.
Has
Do
that
you
closed
oppose-
yet?
Has it opened? Who knows?
I don't know.
There's a lot of interesting stuff going on there. If you
15
look
more days and you're wrong.
at- I'm taking boots. Actually, the 28th, that is when the court reopens the trial, if this hasn't been closed. So we'll see. There's some real money involved.
Yeah.
But the
No one wants to go to trial ever.
well,
So
nobody wants to go
Well,
to a position if your name is
yeah, I
Trump.
mean,
You certainly
unless
don't
you're-
want to be deposed about anything.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. So
so
try
there
and
was
make
another-
people believe that you're gonna testify. You just do your very best to keep them in the dark.
Well, I think that things are a lot simpler and more obvious than they seem. And I think the announcements by Facebook, or whatever they're called, about the metaverse,
Face mask.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't buy it. I'm not going to have one. But
Well, today,
on the other
didn't
hand-
they?
on the other hand, there's, you know, basically this is lining up as a battle between Apple on one side and everybody else on the other, and everybody else includes Microsoft and Meta, which announced you know, a strategy which actually in the enterprise, I think, will be successful. Not necessarily with those two players, but in general, I think that's what the Twitter Musk deal is all about, is positioning for competing against other entries in this you know, reworking of the web into a more app-based environment.
I think it's more than the app-based environment. I mean, it's that VR metaverse vibe that you know, yes, the app-based environment, sure, but you know, I think they're also sticking a lot of the neck out for that.
Yeah,
And they made an announcement today. Hold on, and I want to ask the group if they heard about this. The Meta has this place where you go to get together with other people. It's got a name. It's like the real
Horizon.
Horizon.
Yeah,
World.
and today they announced that that it was being barely used. And
They didn't announce that. It was a Wall Street Journal article.
Yes, Wall Street Journal story. Right. Why would they announce it? So I mean, it seems to me that like you were saying, Steve, that the idea of this meeting of like Microsoft and Meta to create something in that sort of business environment is a direction that actually could catch on. I still don't know about it becoming a regular part of everybody's life, unless you believe in Ready Player One's the whole vibe in that movie.
Well, I don't agree with cinematic universes in general, so I don't know what you're talking about.
I was making it an example, unless you actually see it as something that's going to become big. You know, as long as you have to wear the goggles, like you say, I don't see it hitting that sort of.
Well, I agree with Keith. I mean, there are people who've been saying every year that just wait, next year is going to be amazing. But I think that part of the calculation has little to do with why Musk is going after Twitter, and why, you know, just in general, the newsletter story, I think, has a whole lot more impact as people start to realize that if they have control of their publishing, then they just have to make a deal to bundle it with other things, which as what's the guy, your friend's name, Evan
Shapiro,
as he suggests, the issue of these technologies is churn. It's staying, not opting out.
So wait till metaverse and newsletters combine.
Well, I think they already are combined. This long article about an interview between Satya Nadella and Mark Zuckerberg was done in the letter sphere on stratechery or streckery or whatever he calls it.
The letter sphere. Did you just make that up, or is that a thing?
It is now.
Yes. Okay. Now it's not. You know, it was a fascinating conversation between the three people, and Ben Thompson, who was the author of the article. Let me just say that the Twitter threads that I've seen, including one on the Gillmor Gang.me Telegram.
Ask Keith to clear that up.
Yeah.
T.me/Gillmor Gang, not gillmorgang.me. T.me/Gillmor Gang.
Actually, there's a new feature that I was told about, which allows you to be able to convert that into your own domain. So I might be right.
You might be crazy.
So
This might be
This may be the lunatic I'm looking for.
Thank you. God, we are like a band.
very robotic there.
We
Jack.
are like a tight band.
Mr. Roboto.
Domo arigato.
So I mean, you know, take it seriously or don't, but the battle is joined here, and it's not about carburetors on your head anymore. It's about eyeglasses and who's going to get there first.
You know,
And
I think in that
Apple.
world, though, aren't they talking about AR? That's why I think that the whole world of VR is an issue that sort of needs to be dealt with separately. I can see already the idea of VR helping out, you know, in construction and in engineering and in medicine, and there's a lot of practical applications for it. glasses be damned. But
To me, the key is, what happened in the pandemic and what is continuing to happen, which is the work from everywhere, live from anywhere environment. That
Yeah.
is what the metaverse is going to be.
okay.
And, when I get a pair of glasses that I can actually see through, if they also have a component of virtual or what is the
Augmented.
augmented, thank you, reality, that's going to be the one I'm going to get.
Mm.
And I would say that the chances are very good that Apple, since that's the one that I get,
Yeah.
is going to be a leader in this.
The
Just make
interesting
sure that the frames are made by Gucci. Everything else will be fine.
the announcement Microsoft made this week that actually I think is a lot more significant was a new app called Places. And Places is a hybrid work platform for teams to continue to collaborate in quotes places, no matter where everyone is, geographically or physically. And it wasn't covered that much, but I think it's probably more significant than the metaverse one. I think the metaverse one is a hedge. They're basically saying, look, if Facebook pulls this off, we want to be in there. And it is the case that sitting around a table, if you imagine this Zoom call, but instead of being in little squares down the side of the screen, we're all sitting in a virtual space. Now you can scan yourself so that the avatar actually looks like you. That's basically Microsoft's hedge, that team meetings will happen around a table in a virtual space, and companies can force employees to wear these face masks, whereas you probably wouldn't choose to wear one. So that's his bet. I think that's not a big bet, but the Places app I think is a very good bet. I have an investment in a company called Cadence that does something similar, and I'm pretty sure that CEO woke up that morning, not very happy that Microsoft had more or less copied a lot of his features.
Did you see an ad for a new product?
Yeah, Michael, you were saying?
I was going to say, isn't Slack the dominant player in that kind of world at this point?
Well, I work for Salesforce, so I'm not going to comment, but it's certainly one of the major players.
Thanks for the non-comment, by the way.
So Slack is mainly messaging and alerts and notifications in terms of the dominant consumption model of Slack. It has a lot of other features, including audio and video, but I don't think they take center stage very much in terms of actual usage. Teams, of course, is only Zoom-like video calls with screen sharing. So it's closer to sitting around the table in the metaverse than Slack would be. But I suspect that, real-time communications with faces and voices and screen sharing is a set of features that will be table stakes for anyone that's serious about, working in the enterprise, sure.
Well, it's going to be an interesting confluence of competitors.
I just like the idea that there is a reason behind what Musk is doing. I just think that's an interesting plot pivot.
Well, I think so. Add to that the fact that through all of the cameras on his cars, he is constructing, or he has the means to construct a virtual world. What he does with that in the future, I have no idea. But there's stuff going on.
So sorry, I just got scared for a minute there. I'm sorry. I just was freaked out by what you just said.
So Steve, what do you think? Do you think it's yet possible to articulate what his purpose is with Twitter in a specific way, or just that he wants to be at the table in the fight?
Well, I mean, he's been at the table for quite a while. He's got 3 or 4 companies that are Take a look at what he just did with Starlink, which basically he did a version of what he seems to be doing or could be doing with the Twitter buyout. He said, we got to stop, giving this away for free. On the other hand, never mind, we'll keep giving it away for free. So what's he doing there? This is kind of the part of the platform that he's constructing, as you just suggested, Keith. What is that? What?
That's it. Sounds like
I
the
don't
British
agree.
government.
Okay, please continue, Dennis.
I'm not sure he has a plan. I think if you look at that whole scenario, it's not we can't keep doing Starlink. Oh, okay, we'll keep doing Starlink. It goes back about a week to his ridiculous peace plan for the Ukraine war. He got laughed off the internet because of it, and his response was to say, "Okay, screw you. I'm going to take Starlink away from Ukraine." Doesn't make any sense, but it looks like a wounded ego with all of the thought and premeditation that goes with a wounded
Well, I think
ego.
that's
Say
very
not much.
possible. That's very possible that it's an aimless kind of floating strategy. But on the other hand, if you look at these other players who are spending lots of money, Meta is spending, what is it, some multiple billions of dollars investing in this metaverse concept. And Microsoft is doing the same with its Azure platform. Essentially, they're bringing that in. You've got a lot of people that if you look at them slightly above the level of the personal nature of being a zillionaire, this is a serious effort on the part of, I think, dominant Apple to reorganize how we collaborate and live online. And I think that all of these players are going to have a piece of this puzzle.
I don't agree with that
I think
either.
I think it's going to go through a couple of stages. There's going to be a stage of proprietary stovepiped competing platforms, and then there'll be a merger. I mean, look at the home automation space, where you had an Apple Home platform, a Google platform, an Alexa platform, and now, they decided that maybe we should make an interoperable platform that's called Matter, and now everybody can play. And so the terms of competition are changing as everybody migrates
Well, we'll see
interoperable platform.
We'll see whether or not interoperable standards actually become real or not. That's not a given.
Well, it is the way of the world. However, I think a lot of what we're looking at is just a 21st century tulip bulb mania. I don't think there's any there. I think you're going to see a lot of billionaires become millionaires.
Well, I think there is a there, but I think that nobody really sees it very clearly. Everybody thinks they see it. If you go back to the early days of any platform, people start spinning out application ideas, some of which take hold and some of which don't, and some of which come around and get implemented 20 years later.
I disagree. I think the focusing on the metaverse or the marketing aspects of these companies and how they're trying to approach their consumer or enterprise customers is one thing, and I think that everybody is right if they suggest that there are going to be a lot of ex-billionaires in the future.
But look, it's not just the technology stack; it's the customer presence. So Steve held up his Apple device and said he's going to go into that universe. Salesforce has a customer presence. Microsoft has a customer presence that are already using their technologies for business, for enterprise work. Facebook doesn't right now. Facebook has a consumer presence and some kind of advertising presence, and they're trying. Their path into the enterprise space has to be through an alliance with somebody who already has enterprise customers.
The thing that is interesting about Musk, if you list the assets he either has or could get, Tesla cars, Starlink, Dogecoin, which he's big on, SpaceX, and then now Twitter. This in a way is an interconnected global platform for communications and transport that is all consuming. And there aren't very many people who would have a vision big enough to imagine they could run the world, literally run the world. I think that might be his vision, that he's putting in place lots of pieces, including the money piece as well. He's kind of, he's kind of disconnected enough from the status quo in terms of the vested interest he really doesn't have in it, to be able to challenge the status quo probably more effectively than a lot of people.
Keith, you forgot the Boring Company, I think.
And the Boring Company, yeah, well, that's part of transport. And
doesn't it get a little scary with someone like Musk, who seems somewhat unpredictable, somewhat I kind of feel like he speaks and then he thinks about it later. But someone like Musk, who has a vision of running the world and maybe could do it. Does that put us all in just sort of a scary position? I mean, look at what he did with the Starlink with Ukraine. It's like, I'm cutting you off. Oh,
yeah, but you know what's interesting?
Yeah, he has the power to do that.
You know what's interesting, Tina, is normally that would be right. Like, it's like a James Bond character.
Or the guy in Help. Dare I say it, ruled the world.
Yeah,
that guy.
So normally I'd agree with you, except for the fact that the people who should be running the world, politicians elected to represent us, are in such low regard that Musk actually looks like an upgrade.
Well, sure, I agree.
Or just not that additionally scary.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Musk is fascinating because he has those two aspects that Tina talked about. He does seem to be impulsive. He does seem to be ego-driven. He will say things that don't seem to have much thought behind them. He's got the same kind of Twitter presence in a way that Trump does. But on the other hand, there's the aspect of him that's built these amazing companies that have accomplished some amazing things in terms of rocket world and in terms of automotive world, in terms of energy. There's this strange duality to Musk. He's a rational, brilliant visionary, and he's an impulsive idiot.
Yes, but what I don't sense in Musk is I don't sense compassion. I don't sense wanting to help, wanting to serve, wanting to better. I sense him wanting to control, to put these pieces together, and he is a successful visionary and business person, unlike Trump. So it's I just don't know that he's got that humanitarian compassion component. I don't see him as or maybe I'm wrong, but do you see him?
But I don't think.
Okay, it's not Paul. Is he a visionary or is he an idiot? Raise your hand. Visionary?
What's the difference?
Okay,
He's a visionary.
idiot. Excellent. The magic of television. Look at that.
But what I was going to say to you, Tina, is it's quite likely that he's on the the early edge of the autism spectrum. So I think the idea that he doesn't have empathy or emotion is not real. It's the way he's built anatomically as a human being expresses that. But you look at things like his love of children, of which he has a lot and can afford them. Clearly there's more to him than just this kind of robotic automaton, and I doubt he has control as an end game. I think it's more like a video game mentality of putting all the stuff together and winning. I think it's a winning mentality, but I don't think it's a control mentality particularly, which is why he likes Dorsey with this whole distributed stuff.
How much would it take to tip him over this way, though? How much does it take for someone that's got control of all these different pieces of our lives
Okay.
to go over to the dark side?
Okay.
Obviously
We're
not
gonna
much.
solve this right now. Let's.
All right, I'm done.
Well, you're not done. You're right there. I can see you.
Shall we do some politics?
Okay, go ahead.
So I was astounded, and maybe somebody can tell me more about this. The number of elections that are happening out there that have deniers as candidates is something like 345 different. I mean, that's an astounding number. And
Yes, both the Washington Post and the New York Times had major pieces on that, and it is a huge number. There is a threat to democracy that is not zero. It's not trivial, and really hard to gauge.
Well, and many of those were in attorney general positions, governor positions. They were some really important positions, especially if you go down ballot a little bit, and the power that they would have in any upcoming election is mind-boggling.
I mean, it starts at the top with the Secretary of State and the governor, and it goes all the way down to the election board. I call them Bannon's time bombs. He's taken his audience and said, go and work on elections. Get involved in your local election board. I don't know how many people are listening to him and doing that, but the threat is out there. And we're going to know a lot about this on election day, whether any of these, some of these election deniers will win. How many will win? How many will not? Will tell us a lot about what the next decade of American life will be.
Yeah, I thought in what I read, and I'm not sure where I read it, there was a thing that was discussing just that the sheer number of them implies that there will be a significant number of them that'll get through.
Yes, because some of them are some of them are in red states, and if they get through, I don't think it's going to change anything. It's the ones who are in purple states that I would be scared of. Those are the ones who could tip an outcome or subvert an outcome.
But the weird thing is, they could only pull that off if enough people would want to vote for them to help them. And so the bigger question is, why are there so many people that would vote for them? I think that's a more interesting question than why there are so many candidates, because that could be explained by the internal wranglings in the Republican Party and the fact that it's owned by the grassroots, and the grassroots are mainly deniers. But that doesn't explain why. That doesn't really explain why people would vote for them. Well,
it explains why the grassroots would vote for them.
But that's not enough for them to win.
Well, let's hope so. So the question is, I think, with the independents, because there are committed MAGA base voters who will vote for them. There are committed Democratic voters who will vote against them. Who is in the middle? That's the big mystery.
I don't think you got to worry so much about that. I think if this was to follow what I've seen time and time again in the marketplace, the market's got room for 2, possibly 3 specific brands, and then everything goes to hell in a handbasket. We're talking about Coke and Pepsi and Dr. Pepper, or Coors and Budweiser and a lot of local brews. I think what we're going to see is that there are so many crazies trying to out Trump that you're going to have voter overload. And I don't believe that the majority of any state is big enough. I don't think any state has a majority that's going to say, oh yeah, I want like crazy in all of these offices. And if you look at 2020, a very red state, Georgia, decided that they might like conservatism, they might be red, but they're not crazy. I think you're going to see that pattern.
Well, interestingly, it's beginning to look like there's going to be a runoff between Warnock and that other guy.
Walker.
Yeah, I'm just diminishing his power by not giving the name. And that what we're going to see is something very similar to the special election that we saw that actually gave the Democrats enough control to be able to accomplish what they have, which has been pretty substantial, surprisingly. So
that won't get tied up in the courts.
Well, what I'm trying to say is that I think Michael suggested that it's about the independents rather than is it really about the independents as much as it's about these kinds of special elections where the populace is focused on what the real issue is? Because that to me is what happened in Georgia, that switched control of the
U.S. Senate.
U.S. Senate. Yes, exactly. So if it comes down to that, is that going to sufficiently energize the Democrats, who actually have a plurality, to go to the polls? That's really, where the rubber meets the road. Anybody?
Well, except for the gerrymandered districts that.
Yeah, but that's all factored in already.
Gerrymandering only works for the state legislatures and the House. If it's a statewide election, there's no gerrymandering. It's the whole state votes. So
that's right. Except in Maine.
Except in Maine. Well, no, even in Maine, the senator is a statewide election. The electoral college.
Choice voting.
Pardon?
You've got ranked choice voting.
Yeah. But they're still statewide.
I don't think anybody understands what you mean by ranked choice stacked voting.
I do.
Well, I don't.
Okay.
Explain it for me.
Who? I don't know if I could succinctly explain it. Maybe Mike.
Think of it as an instant runoff. If you don't have a majority, then the two candidates vote again, and if there's still no majority, they vote again. In ranked choice voting, you say, all right, here's the one I most want, and if they don't get in, here's the one I second want, and if they don't get in, here's the one I third want. So you've got, on election day, a ranked choice from all of the voters. And then what happens is, if there's no majority winner, then the lowest candidate of the list gets dropped off, and their votes are redistributed according to the number twos. And if there's still no majority, then the next lowest gets dropped off.
What will
eventually you have a majority winner, but all of that runoff is just compressed into your first.
I understand. Vote. Okay, so what does ranked choice, whatever it is, what is its impact on the midterms or the shortly thereafters? I didn't bring it up. Somebody brought up Ronnie Chase, they
well,
brought that up.
then
So
it's
what?
up to Dennis to explain why he brought it up.
Excellent.
I brought it up first and foremost as a joke. Secondly,
Well, then let's just laugh and move on.
delayed laughter. I love it. No, but there have been people have gamed out ranked choice voting to show that perhaps either the number one candidate would maybe be overtaken by the number two candidate if the number two candidate was was a majority's number three candidate. In which case you might not see a winner that you would expect.
Well, that may be the case. I mean, certainly Sarah Palin is not a fan of ranked choice voting.
Well, then I am. Okay, so
She's not a fan of math.
So
They have it in
basically
most
what you're
European-
saying is that the rank, I just can't get it, but that it favors potentially a more democratic outlook.
Not necessarily. It depends on.
That's big D or small d.
That's why I was brought up, was to suggest that it might mitigate some of the gerrymandering, et cetera, influences in our current political situation. Would that
All
be?
it does is compress the time from initial vote to final winner being declared.
And
Because
which way it goes.
you can do ranked choice voting in on a computer on election night.
Mm-hmm.
In Europe, where they have this in many countries, they call it single transferable vote, and there's various different versions of it. It's generally not favored the left, because what it comes down to is if the smallest parties are on the right, their votes get redistributed first. And so it depends whether the smallest favor the left or the right, which way it goes. And at least in Europe right now, it seems to favor the right more than the left.
It's a wild card.
So you wanted to talk about politics, Frank. How are you doing?
I've just gotten an earful.
Let's talk about Liz Truss.
Well, I was going to say this whole thing with the Musk turnaround sounds an awful lot like the current British government.
How so?
Oh, you think because he changed his mind?
Yeah, let's put on the brakes and make an immediate U-turn. That's how so.
Well, it's dramatic because, I mean, we all saw it took the better part of a couple of months for Liz Truss to get the leadership of the Conservative Party through all the process that is involved there. And she really doesn't have a broad grasp of anything except for two things. She thinks tax cuts will lead to dribble down, which will lead to growth. That's kind of it.
Well, that didn't work.
It turns
here.
out, and then it turns out very quickly the markets don't agree. And so in a way, the markets are her people. So her people said, we don't agree, and started selling stuff. And to such an extent that it threatened the entire pension fund system in the United Kingdom, and possibly still does.
And the mortgages.
And the mortgages. And then
And the interest
this
rates.
guy, the chancellor, is very close to her. They've been long-standing friends, and she picked him on purpose as a trusted ally. She had to let him go as a kind of a give back to the markets.
She shoved him under the bus, Keith.
She shoved him under the bus, and then the markets responded Friday and over the weekend by downgrading UK bonds. So they, in other words, they're not buying it. So when the market opens tomorrow, it's going to be a mess. Now, all of the politicians here in her party are kind of split between people who say, oh my God, we can't go through another 2 or 3 months choosing another leader. And by the way, there isn't another leader there isn't a magic unifier You know, it would have to be a bland person who no one was offended by. There isn't actually a unifier that could be a leader. So that means that a lot of people are saying, well, let's stick with Truss.
What about
the market's
Starmer?
like that? I mean, it's going to be pretty dramatic, I think. And
What about
the
Starmer?
money is on her going. The words I heard on Friday were, she'll be gone by bonfire night, Guy Fawkes night, which is November the 5th. And I doubt that can be true. I doubt that can be true. But they could have started the process of getting rid of her by then.
Have you seen the
What it
lettuce?
really amount?
Have you seen the lettuce stunt?
I missed what happened today. Somebody mentioned to me that she'd done something today, but I haven't seen what it is. What is
No,
it?
it's not that she's done it. I think one of the papers has put up a live webcam of a head of lettuce, an iceberg lettuce, and the question is, which will last longer, Liz Truss or the lettuce? And I think you can view the lettuce online. I don't know what the URL is.
Yeah, but I mean, given that the UK is, I don't know where it ranks, but it's probably it's certainly in the top 10 countries in the world, and by GDP, it's probably in the top 5.
No,
And
it just got eclipsed by India. I think it's it's number 7 now.
Number 7, but it's a major economy, and this is a pretty major structural challenge. It's not a superficial challenge.
Well, I agree with most of what you're saying. However, because they've just recently had elections, there is a stable of candidates who lost the election who may deserve a second look. If you think about it, Liz Truss has now made a U-turn and adopted just about all of the financial policies of her closest competitor who she beat. So I think the biggest problem that they would have is that they don't have the mechanism for removing or having a no confidence vote again so soon after the election. So they'd have to do some changing of policy or procedure in order to get rid of her. That's not undoable, or that's not impossible to do.
Well, I mean, how is Boris Johnson forced out?
Yeah, they pushed him over the edge of the.
Yeah, well, who pushed him, and why couldn't they push Liz Truss out?
No, they can. All they have to do is vote against her in sufficient numbers on matters, and the most obvious one is a confidence vote, but it could be on a policy vote as well. And she'd become untenable as leader, and then the party, you know, in British politics, there's all these secret committees that exist behind the scenes that start to make things happen, and you know, the wheels start to turn. It's very doable.
Yeah, and the no confidence vote, the one against Johnson, was split in an odd way to the point where Johnson took credit for it and said, "Hey, this is good for us." And in fact, it wasn't good for them. And 2 weeks later, Johnson was gone. I think that a no confidence vote here in this particular instance would be worse than the one that Johnson had, and would be the prelude to a dump.
Well, in the opinion polls, by the way, the Labour Party is something like 34 points ahead.
So what about Keir Starmer? I ask again.
Yeah,
he's a strong individual.
Yeah, but the Labour Party is so flawed. The fact that it's 34 points ahead is a sign of how deep the crisis is.
Yeah.
And by the way, I come from a Labour family. My mother was a union organizer, so I'm not saying this from any bias. It's just a fact.
Well, it's not clear to me that we're going to see her removed. Something about this, since I know nothing about it, something suggests that won't happen anytime soon. That there'll be a lot of muddying around. So I'd like to change the subject to China.
Big place.
Yeah. They're just having their Congress.
Yes. And I think Michael Markman posted a unfortunately, was a Twitter thread, so I don't believe anybody who's saying anything because I don't know who they are.
Well,
But
because the Twitter thread has a link to an article, so
yeah,
you can click on the link.
I'm just talking about what I think, which is that there's a lot of intensity about the moves that the Biden administration has been making regarding our policy around chip technology and its flight out of the United States control into the Chinese community.
Yeah, you mean that one company?
Well,
No, the
I
policy
think that
is,
Keith knows a lot about this, but I think I'm going to disagree with him once he says it.
no, I was just going to describe the policy. The policy that Biden has said is that American citizens or green card holders who continue to work for this particular list of Chinese companies will lose their US citizenship. And so as a result of that, there's been mass resignations in semiconductor companies in China from people who don't want to lose their US citizenship. And the Chinese companies, the world economy is so interconnected now. These Chinese companies are largely populated by non-Chinese employees alongside Chinese employees. So it's basically a drawing back of borders and a calling back of citizens in pursuit of a trade war.
Hmm.
And possibly a real war, who knows, but certainly a trade war.
Dennis, you have any thoughts?
Not specifically, not specific to this. I don't. I see China as an issue that can be managed in the same way that Russia is being managed. I don't think we have to skip right over to war.
It's interesting that this conference I'm at, this was quite a bit of discussion, and one of the points that was made that was quite compelling to me, and this is from somebody who's a strong supporter of Ukraine, made the point that Russia losing would lead to the former Soviet countries around Russia to gain confidence, and for there to be a Chinese attempt to help them confront Russia, which would lead to turning that whole part of the world into another version of the Middle East where everything's totally unstable. And so this person was saying, a Russian loss is probably the most destabilizing thing the world would get, could happen to the world.
I agree with a lot of that. In fact, I was telling somebody the same thing the other day. And I think we lose sight of the fact that the full name of the country is the Russian Federation. There are a lot of entities that make up that federation. Russia happens to be a big country with nukes, but there's nothing that would stop in a newly confident Belarus or Georgia or any of the smaller entities from saying, hey, you know what, we got this. We can do this ourselves. We don't need Vladimir. And
the Kazakhs, the Chechens,
sure,
all of those people on the east side of Russia that faces off to China, China started visiting them and encouraging them in the last few weeks. So it's kind of, I wasn't fully aware, but I went and did some reading after I heard this, and it's definitely true.
Yeah, what's going on with the border dispute with Armenia? I mean, that's another example.
But I think Keith is onto something.
Let Michael finish. Let Michael finish, please.
I was saying, I think Keith is onto something when you talk about Russia as a Eurasian country. We tend to focus on the western parts of Russia, but the eastern parts are Asian, and there could easily be more affinity with China than with Moscow.
I find that a little bit of a stretch, simply because everybody has been watching Mongolia and Tibet for years, decades, maybe in generations, and how China treats them. And I don't think there's a strong appetite to get close to China if it means the same fate as those countries. Taiwan looks like a gleaming example of how to do it right, but they've got problems too. So I think we're going to see a lot of instability on the Eurasian continent, and that's not a bad thing from our perspective.
So Keith, what do you think about this move to basically wall off China from access to our advanced chip technologies?
I mean, firstly, I think it will fail. It will just encourage China to develop its own, and that wouldn't be a good thing. So if you were looking at this from the point of view of America, you would want America to be selling things through Chinese assembly and other stuff, and have a relationship to China that makes the two countries interdependent. By making them less interdependent, China becomes more independent, and China's the rising power, not the falling power. So an independent China is not necessarily a desirable policy outcome.
Interdependence can be achieved in a number of different ways, such as cooperation on climate change. The other thing to think about is that the United States doesn't control some of the key technology. For example, there's a Dutch company that makes most of the semiconductor production equipment that doesn't want to see its business with China decline. So yeah, I agree with you, Keith. It's at best it's gonna present a porous boundary, but that might be okay if all we're really looking for is to keep, as somebody said this week, keep China a generation or two behind us.
I mean, if you look at their car production, it isn't dependent on the US at all for technologies. It is dependent on Korea and Singapore to some extent, but not the US. So, and it's super successful. So, you know, what is the 20-year outcome in the US and China? You know, it is entirely defensible that the US wants to slow down China's rise. That probably is a quite rational thing to want to do, just as the UK wanted to slow down the US's rise and Germany's rise in between the wars. So the leading power wanting to slow down potential replacements, that's rational. But you have to not cut off your nose to spite your face. So, and I don't know enough to know where the line is. I don't have a good feel for that.
Well, one thing to keep in mind is that a lot of companies from a lot of different nations rushed to China thinking it was a great new open market, and they gave up their trade secrets. They provided China with a lot of know-how, and they haven't made money on in the process. You talk about the car industry. How are the Koreans doing? Are they making money in their joint partnerships? I don't think so. I mean, China does a lot of business in windmills too. And there was a piece on 60 Minutes a while ago that showed that the source code running the windmills was actually written in English and written by a company here in Massachusetts. They just stole it and started reselling it.
Yeah, but I think that might be an old story, Dennis. I think it's probably totally true, but it might be an old story because China's ability to write code now is fine.
Yeah, but that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about that specific instance. We're talking about their approach to leapfrogging and getting into a market. They don't have any scruples about stealing.
Yeah, I think their bigger problem, and this is what is being discussed at their Congress, the Communist Party Congress, is how does China, let's imagine for a minute that we're their strategists. How does China, with a huge domestic economy that people want to sell into, how does it integrate with a world that is different to itself on terms that don't diminish it? I don't think China is looking for advantage. I think it's looking for engagement and interdependence. And so what should they do? I mean, they're not going to change their political system, so that's off the table. I think that they have a carrot, which is trillions of dollars a year of spending power by Chinese citizens on goods like General Motors and others that build and sell cars there. That's probably the carrot. And then does geopolitics trump economics? So is it smart for the US to, because of geopolitics, do things that are going to punish the US economy?
But again, what is the track record of actually making profits according to the Chinese marketplace?
I think
Does the foreign company actually make money, or do they just give away their trade secrets?
well, look at Apple. Apple makes a fortune in China.
They make a fortune, yeah, from production in China. Yeah, they
No,
sell
but also
of
selling.
here.
I mean, the iPhone's the most popular phone in China among citizens.
Okay, name another example.
General Motors and Ford both are doing well there. Tata from India, through various licensing agreements.
There you go.
Anyone that exports raw materials or food is doing well there, because China is an importer of raw materials and some foods. But I'm not an expert. I'm just throwing off things I do know. I don't have a holistic view, actually, to be honest.
Yeah. Oh, neither do I.
So one data point, and then we've got about 10 minutes before the workmen outside start making more noise. So that'll be a natural windup to this. The Google announced Google Fiber. Did anybody see that?
Yeah, 8 and 5 gigabits in both directions.
120.
For 125 for the 5 and 150 for the 8.
Yeah, is that a big deal?
You know, I've got a gigabit from AT&T.
Well, you're already living in that world, but just in general, I would think that starts to bleed over into Comcast's Xfinity's hold on the bundle environment and the streaming transformation. If you can just basically have this 10x pipeline into in and out of your house, then what do you care about the bundles that Comcast is providing? I think it's going to be very disruptive. And Frank, I'd like your thoughts about this stalemate that we see, so-called traditional linear video morphing into ad-based streaming weekly drop video, which looks pretty much like the winner.
Well, I do think that we're going to go through this lengthy time of experimentation with the sort of the dual stream. It's funny; it's so reminiscent of what was the original dual revenue stream of cable. It is now the same dual revenue stream online, and that is subscriptions and advertising. And that's the direction. I'm not sure one will win out over the other until you get, there's so many outliers. There's like 3 or 4 big players, then there are all these outliers that people go and invest in. Can they exist within this sort of dynamic? I'm not sure that they can, but they'll most likely get eaten up, and you'll have more big companies like Comcast, and you know, that's what's, I think, going to happen. And I think that as long as people are willing to spend money in the advertising in the linear world, that will continue to let the linear advertising world, because it's funny, while the ratings go down, the rates go up. That is not necessarily the way it always has been, right, Michael? I mean, you based it against viewership, and that's where you got your CPM, and that's where you created your budget, and that's where you do.
Yeah, it's viewership and demographics. So the rates change per show and day part to some extent.
So broadcasting programs right now, at best, are doing about as well as pretty decent cable shows. So you're getting really crazy numbers, low numbers, like, you know, a 0.1 for a demographic for a primetime show, which is something that, you know, in the past would have gotten the show canceled. Yet, if the advertisers continue to buy it and it's on some tier in a bundle that lives on the cable, it's going to make enough money to continue to stay there.
But the question you have to ask, and I don't know what the numbers are, CPM is a rate per thousand. If you are getting fewer thousands, you're getting less money. So you might raise the rate and still be getting less overall revenue. So I don't know how that multiplies out.
Well, I actually don't know how it's working right now, but it seems to be, because the people I talk to are very happy. You know, if they're that happy, why is NBC talking about dropping their last hour of primetime? Clearly, they think they're not getting enough revenue. Except there's also the fact that if the local stations put in a 10 o'clock news, they're going to make a deal to sell inventory into the local 10 o'clock newses. So that means they're going to profit regardless.
All right, but you're not, and maybe you don't have an opinion about this. You're not answering my question, which is, if Google Fiber comes in and creates this pool of basically cord cutters who come in and say, the hell with this. I don't need, what I need is sports and, a couple of things from the major networks or wherever they continue to be. And you see Apple starting to become a player in terms of sports programming, which is interesting. There's going to be a dislocation as we get to whether, in November, which is a few days from now, when Netflix and Disney Plus, among others, go to ad-supported versions of their streaming platforms.
Yeah, imagine how much money they'll make in the 3 days before the election.
Explain.
Their advertising tiers hit on the 1st of the month. Mm-hmm. They still get 3 days or until or a few days until the election. So they're going to be the beneficiary of big ad spending for a few days. Big ad.
It's true, but the ad budget, the combined ad budget of everyone who advertises, is not inflexible. And if you're spending more money on streamers, you have less money available to put against broadcasters. So you've seen it. You've seen how Google and Facebook have decimated the ad revenues of the newspapers, because you just, and especially if we're heading into a recession, one of the first budgets that any company cuts is their marketing budget. The ad budget is considered an expendable place to reduce your top line so you can help your bottom line. So the timing for this, if it goes the way Steve was talking about, and these new streaming advertising platforms come online, I think that's a big headwind against the broadcast networks.
You asked for an opinion. My opinion is I agree with you, Michael. That's exactly true. But if you ask for reality, I think it's going to take a while to get there. That's
right. Well, the question I have is whether or not this Google Fiber thing is real.
No, I think it's real, but my opinion.
They just
of
came
it-
through our backyard. Yeah.
The question: Do you know
No,
nationally what the presence of Google Fiber is?
It's only in a few cities.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
the
I think
impact- the
I don't think
impact
they're
of, the impact of sorry, Frank, the impact of using YouTube TV has been substantial in this house.
well but
Because
this-
it completely changes how you interact with the television. You don't watch the cable news networks anymore because if something happened, you just rewind and look at it because it's unlimited recording. It becomes a much more flexible environment, and it starts to feel a whole lot more like the newsletter environment than it does like the mainstream media environment. And if Google can deliver this price point, they're going to take a chunk out of the traditional cable infrastructure, and it could happen. That's my question: is how soon can this happen? Because we spent a lot of money on cable.
Well, it can happen as soon as you want it to happen. As far as the Google thing is concerned, when I first saw that story, I didn't dismiss it, but I didn't think it was that big a story. A, because it's not everywhere, and B, because most big communities already have that kind of speed available to them anyway. So I think it's it's going to be it's going to happen as the millennials get older. And start to fade away. That's when it's going to happen. So I think we're still looking at a half a generation before it switches.
And I think it's accelerating. I think
Yeah,
it's
more
accelerating,
of my friends are
and I think it's
passing
going
away.
to. I think it's going to over the next few years. It's going to flip remarkably.
No, that's what I mean. I think it's like a half a generation. I think we're not talking about 10 or 20 years. We're talking about 5 or 10 years. Maybe even less. It's still a few years away. It's not tomorrow.
Okay, once around the table, and then we're going to run, starting with Keith.
It's a bit kind of Groundhog Day to me, this whole thing, because it feels as if Panasonic, NBC, Comcast, Disney, Netflix, Amazon are all going to become, in a way, streamed networks. And the only difference will be they're not broadcast anymore, they're streamed. But they still own all the content, and they try to own all the subscription accounts, and they try to sell all the advertising between them. And they'll compete for both. But it's not the world I hoped would happen. The world I hoped would happen is Steven Spielberg can make a movie and sell it to me directly, funded by whoever wants a piece of it. So it feels as if the monsters are going to survive, but in a new form, and the consumers are going to end up paying for bundles again, which is not the most efficient way to be buying stuff.
Brent.
Yeah, I'm still living in the limelight of last night's SEC showdown between Tennessee and Alabama. It was a great game, boy. Oh, yeah.
So
See you in Vegas tomorrow, Dennis.
I don't think so.
I have nothing to add to this conversation. It was good, but you guys covered everything. So.
Michael.
A couple of things. One, I think Keith is right. I mean, remember that Disney Plus is the same company as ABC Television. It's not a different company, and Peacock streaming is the same company as Comcast. But on the other hand, there are large independent players that are not part of the old networks, namely Apple and Amazon and Netflix. So But it's still, not the dream that a lot of us had in the beginning of disintermediation. There's just still plenty of intermediation and middlemen in getting product from the creators to the viewers. The other thing is, I would recommend the podcast Pod Save America that dropped yesterday. It's an interview with Barack Obama with his views of the upcoming election and what he thinks the Democratic strategy should be. He's a very smart guy, that guy, and he tells a good story. So if you're interested in what the Democrats should be doing or are doing, Pod Save America, the latest episode, which dropped yesterday.
Dennis.
I'm going to go listen to Pod Save America.
Has anybody seen or listened to Rachel Maddow's new podcast series, Ultra?
Not yet.
I recommend.
Okay.
Yes, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Dennis. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. I forget what I was going to say. One of the things that amazes me is how many pipes there are to deliver content to the marketplace, and we can disagree about this, but how poor the quality is of much, maybe even most of the content.
Are you talking about the intellectual quality or the technical quality?
Not the technical quality. I don't know. Maybe let's just say there isn't a plot line that I haven't seen before, and probably you all can say the same thing. And to see the same thing coming on again doesn't get me wanting to watch it. Maybe I'm just too old.
So may I recommend
Yes, please.
that you watch a show called Andor, Andor. It is arguably in a genre that I happen to like personally, but the storytelling is magnificent, and the production is top of the line, and it's actually worth your time. It's really interesting. It's worth checking out. It's a prequel to the Rogue One story in the Star Wars universe, but it's just fantastic.
I wrote it down.
Excellent. And as I said a couple of weeks ago, She-Hulk. There's no story like it. Anyway.
Yes.
But
as Michael said last week when you said this, it's kind of thin.
Yeah.
No,
Anyway,
but I have to say this. They dropped their final episode this week, and the final episode makes the whole journey worthwhile.
there you go. But that wasn't the end. Do I get a chance to put a button in of the things that I wanted to discuss, but we didn't?
I don't know.
Two things
Go
very
ahead.
shortly. Well, the first thing is my heart goes out to those people in Iran trying to get their country back. I wish them all the best of luck. I don't see it happening this time, but that's just taking history and adding it to the mix. And the second thing is Bruce Springsteen just dropped his version of Night Shift, which was originally done by the Commodores. It's unbelievable. Check it out. Brent, I'm telling you, go check it out.
Yeah, Springsteen's new album, which is coming out, I think, next month, is about soul music.
Yeah.
Or as Sam Phillips once said, "Get me a white boy who can give me that black sound."
He got him, didn't he? Hey, by the way, I saw the Elvis movie last night. Anyway, that's it. I got nothing else.
Okay.
I'm going to see Springsteen in Dallas in February.
Yeah. Well, say hi for me.
Go introduce yourself to his guitar player, Nils Lofgren. He's a good friend.
One of you recommended For All Mankind recently, and I've been watching it. It is one of the best TV shows I've seen.
It really is, right? So I think it was Steve that did that, wasn't it?
What?
Or was that me?
I think it was me.
You. Definitely wasn't.
I think it was Brian.
Alternate histories to me. So what?
I like a show called Bad Sisters. It's fun.
Yeah, that's
Check it
good.
out.
Yeah, that was a good one. And what else did we like? Oh, we liked Andor, as Frank suggested. It's it makes the whole Star Wars thing seem irrelevant, which is fantastic.
It's real stories. It's real storytelling.
it's
It's
just
incredible. Yeah.
And what was I know Tina says we have to go, and you can see her saying that right there on the picture. Thanks to all of you guys, and thanks to everybody who showed up, and especially those who didn't. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I'm gonna stop the stream.